Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's Product People event. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, our topic is unlocking product strategy and deploying for maximum impact. And Nicholas Holst will present it. And I'm also really excited about this topic since I have also observed that deploying the product strategy to the product team is one of the challenging areas for lead PMs and CPOs. Before starting the presentation, I would like to share a quick introduction about myself. I am Çakıl. I'm based in Turkey. I'm a product management consultant at Product People, and I have been working at Product People for more than 1.5 years. And I had a chance to experience building and delivering B2B and B2C digital products in startup and corporate environments thanks to Product People. I also would like to mention a little about Product People. We work as interim product managers and product leaders to make money. We have 42 in-house PMs employed by Product People, and we give back by organizing online and offline events where we share our knowledge generously. We are Europe's largest PM community with 30,000 members. And thanks for being part of our community and for joining today's event. We have 2 icebreaker questions to adapt you to the topic before we get started. For Zoom attendees, you will see a pop-up on your screen, so you can share your answers by selecting your answer on the pop-up. And for other attendees who join from other platforms like Facebook, LinkedIn, feel free to share your answers via comments. Then I will share the results with you. The first question is, how do you handle stakeholder pressure to ensure a focus on outcomes rather than shipping features? And the options are aligning outcomes with crucial business priorities, ensuring features directly impact desired outcomes, isolating teams from stakeholder influence, emphasizing agility, and the last option is other. And if you choose other, please share your answer in comments. And the second question is, to what degree are the roadmaps in your company directly connected to crucial business objectives? And the options are strongly connected, moderately connected, neutral, or uncertain, weakly connected. I do not want to impact you with my answer, but I am looking forward to seeing your answers. But for me, I will choose aligning outcomes with critical business priorities for the first one. And for the second one, I hope your answer is strongly connected. Otherwise, it should be hard to fulfill business objectives by focusing on the roadmap. Okay, I can see the results. So aligning outcomes with critical business priorities has the highest vote with 70%. Then ensuring features directly impact desired outcomes option comes. And for the second question, we have luckily we have strongly connected, and the second option is moderately connected. Okay. So now we are ready to start, and Nicholas, who is the Chief Product Officer at Source2C, is with us today, and I am handing over to Nicholas. So the stage is yours, Nicholas.
Thank you very much. Let me start out by sharing my screen. And if you can confirm that you can see the screen.
We can see.
Great. Okay, super. Yeah, thanks a lot. I've been excited to come here today and get this opportunity to talk about some of the frameworks that I'm using in my work when deploying product strategy, and I hope that it will be useful for others as well. So we have a lot of content to cover today. So without further ado, let me give you an introduction to what I plan to cover in this presentation. Firstly, I'll give you a little bit of information about myself, who I am, where I come from, and how did I end up where I am today. Then I will talk about the importance of linking your product strategy to your business strategy. So if you are an aspiring product leader and tasked with building out a product strategy, this is an important recommendation. Then I will be introducing the product strategy canvas, which is a framework that outlines the key activities in creating and deploying a product strategy. Then for those of you who are not familiar with objectives and key results, I will be introducing the OKR framework. And similarly, I will also be introducing impact mapping, which is the second framework that we will be focusing on. And then I will show you how you can combine these two frameworks into an overall deployment framework that can be useful for deploying your product strategy. And then lastly, to put it into some context, I've prepared an example from a fictive edtech SaaS company that is using OKRs and impact mapping to deploy their strategy. Yeah, so let me get into it. As I already mentioned, my name is Nicholas Holst, and I live in Copenhagen together with my wife. And so fortunate that we have a baby on the way. So I'm going to be a parent for the first time here in April. So not sure that I can use my toolbox from product management in parenthood, but I'll try and approach this as a challenge as well. So I'm an engineer by education, like you, Shaquille. I'm actually a construction engineer, and I used to refer to myself as a confused engineering student because I tried a little bit of everything in construction engineering, but I couldn't really find the shelf that I felt I belonged to. But then I was so lucky that I got the opportunity to start my career within data engineering and business intelligence. So before I knew about it, I was actually building data-driven products and solutions and doing product management before I even knew that it was a career and it was a profession. So I think that that's probably something that most people that are in product management can recognize, that often the road into product management is a bit alternative. For the past many years, I've been focusing on building large-scale B2B platforms for conservative and engineering-heavy industries. I've been working for construction, industrial manufacturing, and now it's the shipping industry that I'm focusing on. And common for these industries is that the operations is so important, and it's almost like a black hole that sucks everything into it. And you need to understand that context and that environment that your users navigate within in order to implement and build successful products to these industries. I'm a chief product officer, and I'm leading the teams in both product management, design, and also the engineering and technology teams. So that means that everyone that is involved in actually building out the product reports to me. And currently, I'm working for Source2C, which I will also cover a little bit more on the next slide here. Source2C is a corporate incubated startup. Corporate because we are owned by the world's largest supplier to the maritime industry, Rist Ship Supply, and incubated because Boston Consulting Group, Digital Venture, which is the venture building arm of BCG, they incubated the company. So we have basically been built on their blueprint for how to build technology startups. And what we are doing is we are building a global B2B marketplace, transforming how maritime procurement is being done. But I'll cover that in the next slide. So let me jump forward. And the last thing I want to say about myself is I'm what I would call an active consumer of information in the product community. I must admit that I'm really amazed and astonished by the wealth of information and the quality of that information that you can find for free. I mean, some of the best people in the world are sharing openly about their frameworks and ways of working and best practices. And there is so much good information out there. that I've been tapping into, and now I've decided that I also want to try and give something back, which is why I'm sitting here today, and which is also why that if anyone wants to reach out on LinkedIn and connect, then please do. I'm also always happy to connect with peers and share the experience and the frameworks that I'm working on. Yeah. So Source2C. Source2C is a global B2B marketplace where we have the buyers on one side and the suppliers on the other side. And what we are doing is we are basically targeting the inefficient and wasteful processes that characterizes how the industry operates today. So typically the buyers are sending out a request for quote, and in this request there is a list of items that they need. And these items are often generic descriptions, not very specific. So it could be that they say, I want 5 kilos of coffee. And then it's up to the supplier to actually understand whether this is Lavazza or if it's Nescafe or third brands. And this back and forth between the buyer and the supplier adds a lot of friction. It adds a lot of cost. And on top of this, the buyers are typically quoting several suppliers every time they need something, and only one of the suppliers awarded the contract. So what we are doing is we are trying to turn all of this around, and instead of having this back and forth, we are basically going out to the buyers and suppliers and onboarding their framework agreements, which governs a fixed assortment of specific items that they're selling at negotiated prices with real images and high quality product descriptions. And then we put all of this into the platform so that the buyers can buy from their preferred suppliers, and the suppliers can cut away all of these wasteful processes, which ultimately leads to better deliveries, better quality, and also improved welfare for the people who are actually living on board these vessels and are very dependent on getting the right things at the right time. So that was it about Source2C. Then I won't talk more about that, and let's get into the actual topic of today. So if you're sitting out there as an aspiring product leader and you are tasked to craft a product strategy, then you have a really exciting thing ahead of you, I would say. But I would also recommend that you start out by understanding your business strategy before you start building your product strategy. It's super important that you make sure that the product strategy is anchored in your business strategy, and that you make sure that you focus on the things that is right for your company. So the business strategy will spell out where you want to play, in which geographies, in which industries, how you plan to win, what are the capabilities that your company needs in order to be positioned against competitors, what systems, processes, tools, and everything needs to come together in order for your company to succeed in the long term. And then your product that then takes off in this business strategy. And this is where you will define your vision, the target customers, and so on. We'll cover that in the coming slides. So that's just a good recommendation before we get into the weeds here. So let's double click on product strategy. And for that, I have created this strategy canvas. And the product strategy canvas outlines the key activities for both setting a product strategy and deploying a product strategy. For this particular talk, we will be focusing on strategy deployment, as we have mentioned, in particular objectives and key results, and also the impact mapping framework. But if you're interested in the remaining activities here, then I just released an article on LinkedIn, so you can head to my LinkedIn page and read up on that. There are some good insights around the strategy creation parts. But let's dive into OKRs, objectives and key results. So for those of you who are not familiar with OKRs, then it is a quite popular management methodology or goal-setting framework that has been adopted by many successful software companies across the board. And I believe that one reason for its popularity is because of its simplicity. So if you look at it in essence, the objectives and key results consist of two things. It consists of an objective, and the objective is what you want to accomplish. So that is basically your strategic goal. And a good objective should be significant, concrete, action-oriented, and inspirational. And then it consists of a number of key results. And the key results is how you define that measure looks like. So what does good look like, and how do you measure your success? And a good key result needs to be specific, measurable, verifiable, and to some extent also time-bound. So if you implement OKRs in a large company, it can, of course, be fairly complicated, even though that the framework can look simple. OKRs can be broken down into different levels and cascade throughout your organization. And if you do that, and if you're involved in such an exercise, you will also recognize the need for aligning the different goals as you kind of break down the OKRs and cascade them throughout the organization. So it's very important to say that even though the framework in itself might not seem so complicated, then adopting it and implementing it can actually require quite some focus on the governance around it. But let me turn to my good friend OKR Kenobi to help me explain OKRs in a bit more details. I can't take credit for this analogy myself, so I included a link here to the original deck. So if you want to check it out in more details, then hit to that link. But I think it's a pretty good way of understanding OKRs in a simple way. So imagine we have a strategic objective that is to conquer the galaxy. And then we have broken it down into 3 key results in order to measure when have we actually conquered the galaxy. And as you can see in our first iteration, we didn't really think about making the key results specific and quantifiable and verifiable and so on. But in the second iteration, we improved them and we refined them. So now we are aiming to kill more than 98% of the Jedis. We are aiming to find 3 rebel bases, and we are aiming to develop a planet-destroying Death Star. And as I mentioned with the OKR framework, then it is recursive, meaning that you can break it down into sub-OKRs, and you can break those down into even sub-OKRs. And this is how you basically allow to cascade it throughout the different levels of the organization. So if we want to break down one of these key results, then you can see here that we have defined 3 new OKRs that are linked to the previous one. And in this particular example, we defined that we need to send out probe droids, we need to monitor probe droid transmissions, and we need to hire bounty hunters. So this is a pretty good example of how you can think of the OKR framework and how you can see that one level of OKRs can be broken down into a second level or a third level and so on. Great. Okay, so that was the OKR framework. And now I would like to introduce to you the impact mapping framework, which is also a very powerful framework for deploying your strategy. It is probably not as famous as the OKR, but it is really useful. So I would also advise you to Google impact mapping and check out some of the online resources on impact mapping, because it is really a quite interesting framework that you can adopt. So it consists of 4 levels organized in a hierarchical structure. So you see this kind of tree structure unfolding, whereas in the top level, you have your goal. So this is really the target that you want to focus on. This is why you're doing something. And then you break down the target into the second level. And in the second level, you define the different stakeholders that you need to influence in order for them to help you achieve your goal. And the stakeholders, they can be anyone. So this can be departments within your company. It can be customers. It can be users in your software. It could be legislators, it could be partners, it could be anyone that you need to influence, and they need to help you in order to achieve your goal. So for each of the actors, you will then break down the actor into the impacts. And the impacts is what you need to materialize. What impact do you need to materialize for this particular actor in order for that actor to help you to achieve the goal? And then for each of the impacts, you then define the initiatives and the features that you need to develop or deliver in order for the impact to materialize, so that particular stakeholder can help you to meet the goal. And this is basically how the logic of how you roll up, bottom up in this impact map, and how you see all of this coming together. So that's kind of the structure of this. And what makes impact mapping so powerful is how it invites for a collaborative strategic planning session, you could say. So what I typically do with my colleagues is we jump into a digital whiteboard, Miro, FigJam, or something similar. And then we invite in all of the different stakeholders who need to be part of this session. And then we define the goal that we're focusing on. And then in this collaborative session, we break down the goal into the stakeholders that we need to influence. We define the impacts together. And then gradually we work our way down through the impact map. And at the end of the session, the bottom level of the hierarchy here outlines all of the features, the initiatives that have to be worked on for all of these stakeholders to help us achieve the goal. And this exercise is really interesting because it makes everyone in the meeting, all of the stakeholders that you involve, it gives them a really good understanding of how other stakeholders are contributing to achieving the goal. And it creates a very, very good understanding and alignment across your teams. So the process of doing this, even though it might feel a little bit difficult in the beginning, but the process of going through this exercise is really good in aligning everyone around the same goal. And then furthermore, using this process, you can see that the bottom level of the impact map, the features that you need to develop or the initiatives that you need to work on, they have actually already been tagged with the strategic target that they are linked to, right? You can already see here from the features why we are building this feature or why we are doing this initiative. So when you migrate these features into your project management tool, whether that is DevOps or Jira or Trello or whatever you use to organize your work, then you can actually tag each of the work items, each of the features with the strategic goals that they are contributing to. And this will transform your backlog, and it can even transform your roadmaps from being focused on tasks that the team is working on, but to becoming focused on value and on delivering against strategic targets that your company has decided to focus on. This is really powerful, and this will actually transform your backlog from an action list into an action plan of how to achieve your goals. And the last thing that is also very interesting with the impact map is that imagine that you have developed and shipped the first two features in this impact map here, and then you measure that your goal has been achieved. Then all of a sudden you have the context to say, do we then need to do the three other features that we also put into our backlog? Or maybe we should actually reevaluate what is the next most important strategic goal that we need to focus on. And then we park these features as being, they were probably good ideas, but they are not important because they are not directly linked to the business objectives, to the strategic goals that our organization has set out. And therefore we move on to laying out a new impact map, defining new features and putting them into our backlog and prioritization. So I hope this helped to outline some of the benefits of using impact mapping, and it could also have been another similar framework. There are quite a bit of them out there also opportunity solution trees, and but in any case, the process is the most important thing here, and creating these benefits for the team. Okay, so now I introduced OKRs and I introduced impact mapping, and there's probably a few clever minds out there that have already seen how these two frameworks fit neatly together and how you can combine them. And if not, then this slide here will outline how it can be done. So at the left-hand side of this illustration here, you see the OKRs. So you have your strategic objective and you have the key results that have been set out typically by the executive team. And then you have the impact map on the right-hand side. And the overlap here is actually the key results. So you can take one of the key results from your OKR framework, and then you can break that down into your impact map. And by doing that, you really create a very tight connection between the feature at the right-hand side and the OKR at the left-hand sides. So this is the idea of how you can combine the two frameworks. And as I mentioned, then typically the OKR part is something that is set out by the executive management team, the C-level team. And this is strictly business goals, right? It's not talking about the solution. It's not talking about what we need to do. It's just talking about the strategic goals we need to focus on. And then when you go to the impact mapping part of things, that's where you start to engage the different stakeholders in your organization who needs to be able to deliver the solution and who needs to contribute to deliver the solution. And even though the OKRs are set from the top, typically, it's important to see this not as a static exercise, but more as a dynamic organism, that once you build out this framework here and you do your impact map, then the learnings from your discovery, from the customer research that you're doing when you need to kind of de-risk all of the features that you need to build, all of those learnings should be fed up through the process here, so it also informs the strategic goals and setting the strategy. So that's important to mention, that this has to be seen as a dynamic exercise and something that has to be iterated over. So let's try to look at a practical example, because sometimes that makes it a little bit easier to wrap your head around and create like a mental model for how this could look like in real life. So for that, I invented this fictive edtech company who are developing an educational platform. And this company is using OKRs, and they're also using impact mapping in order to deploy the strategic goals that they're setting out and make sure that the organization is focusing on the same things across the departments. So the executive team, they have decided that they want to expand market share in the consumer-to-consumer sector by becoming the leader in the medical educational category. So the consumer-to-consumer segment means that this company has decided to move into a segment where they're actually sourcing content from freelancers and selling this content to other individual consumers in the platform, whereas it could have been a different segment that they were focusing on previously. So they have broken this strategic objective down into some key results. And if we start with the bottom key result, then the bottom key result is focused on the part of the objective that is around increasing market share. And they measure success by saying we need to double revenue growth from individual users from 15% year over year to 30% year over year. And the top key result is targeting the other aspect of the objective about becoming the market leader in the medic category. And they define that they can become that by tripling the number of courses in the medical educational category. Basically meaning that they need to triple the amount of content that is available for the students to consume. So let's try to break down this strategic goal that has been set out by the company and understand how the different stakeholders can contribute to this, what the impacts are we need to create, and so on. So for this example, we have identified 3 stakeholders that we need to influence, that we need to impact in order for them to help us achieve our strategic goal. So one stakeholder is the teachers, basically the content providers. Then we have the operation team that is responsible for onboarding the users in the software, but they are also responsible for onboarding all of the content and curating all of the contents that the content providers are loading into the platform to ensure that it has a pretty good quality and it's useful and valuable for the students. And then we have the marketing team that is, of course, important in order to take this product to the market. So if we break down into the impact level, then for the content providers and the teachers, we have identified that we need to make it easier and faster for them to upload courses if we want them to help us to triple the number of courses in the platform. And for the operations team, then we need to automate the quality assurance process for curating the courses. And the marketing team, they need to help us to create and increase awareness about the solution among the teachers, the content creators. And then we break each of these impacts down into initiatives and features. And what the product team thinks that they need to do in order to make it easier and faster to upload courses is to develop a feature that allows to reuse master content across courses with intelligent tags. They also believe we need a feature to create standard templates to help structure the contents of the courses faster. And then they also want a feature that allows to automatically transcribe the courses using AI. This is the product team's belief that with these features, we can make it easier and faster to upload the courses, which will allow the teachers to triple the number of content in the platform. And for the operations team, we need to have a feature based on AIs that can assess the quality of the courses and automatically flag inappropriate contents. This makes good sense, right? If you need to triple the amount of courses, you might not want to triple the amount of employees you have if they had to manually sit and curate and quality assure all of the courses that were uploaded. And for the marketing team, we need to launch an awareness campaign, and we need to introduce a referral bonus program to the teachers so they can help us acquire new teachers and spread the word about the platform. So this is an example of how you can use OKRs and impact mapping in order to deploy your strategy and also create a clear link between the features or initiatives that you're working on and the actual key results and OKRs that the company have set out to focus on. Great. I can see that we're steadily running a little bit out of time here, so I will come to the last slide and summarize the key learnings that we have been through, and then we can take some of the questions afterwards. So again, I want to mention that if you are an aspiring product leader and you are about to set out and build out your product strategy, then make sure you understand your business strategy first. If you don't, then find someone within your organization who can help you to understand it. The worst thing you could do is to build a brilliant product strategy. It just pulls in the wrong direction compared to where your company wants to be. So that's really important in order for you to succeed. The next thing that is important is that no matter if you choose OKRs or impact mapping, or you choose some other frameworks for deploying your strategy, then it's extremely important to create this understanding for your teams, this strategic context for your teams in order to empower them to make good decisions in their day-to-day activities. We are all working in fast-paced environments with rapidly changing circumstances, and the teams, they need to adapt, they need to make good decisions, they need to course correct, and all of this can be done only if they really understand why they're doing something. So having that North Star, having that clear connection to the strategy allows for the team to make much better decisions and have a much more empowered, it just creates much more empowered teams. And then a third thing that is important for you to think about is that, again, no matter which frameworks you choose, the process is important, right? The collaborative strategic planning process where you are gathering teams from different departments and you're getting this cross-functional alignment where you have everyone focusing on the company goals and understanding how each other are contributing to achieving these goals. That's a very powerful approach, and it also creates some really good outcomes. And then lastly, I also want to emphasize the importance of making sure that when you get stuff into your roadmap, when you get stuff into your backlogs, make sure that this is not task focused or task centric. Make this value focused and value centric so that it's clear when you work on specific items in your roadmap and in your backlog, you understand why you're doing this. What overall company goals are and will I contribute to when I'm working on these particular features? And this will really change the mindset of your teams as well, because they will be asking, why are we doing this? How can we create value? How can we solve problems for our customers and for our business? Yeah, great. Okay, so that was what I had prepared for today, and I hope it was useful for all of you.
Thank you so much, Nicholas, for sharing useful tools. And we also received positive feedback from Mehmet from chat. This impact mapping framework is definitely very helpful. Really like the top-down approach from strategic objective to initiatives and features.
Cool, that's good to hear.
Okay, so let me share my screen. Okay, so we will continue with the Q&A section. Please share your questions with us by sending them on the chat or by commenting on the other platforms. I would like to share more about product people to give you some time to think about your questions. And let me continue with use cases to engage with product people. We work as interim product managers to cover permanent positions and parental leaves. We do coaching to improve the efficiency of the product development processes and upskill the product teams. And last but not least, we help with product discovery processes by conducting market user research and building MVPs from scratch. We are working with B2C clients like Zalando, Freenow, and here you can see some of our B2C clients. And we are also collaborating with cool B2B clients like World Health Organization, Sestrify. I would like to share some key statistics from our company. We have supported 200 cross-functional teams. We are in 42 in-house product managers, and 62% of our team are women in the team. Here you can see our amazing diverse team, and if you would like to join our team, we are looking for associate product managers. And if you would like to apply, feel free to scan the first QR code. And if you would like to subscribe for our newsletter to receive inspiring content in product management, scan the second QR code. Thank you for listening. Now we can continue with Q&A. Zoom attendees, please feel free to share your questions on chat, or you can also raise your hand, unmute yourself and ask your questions directly on Zoom. And other attendees can share questions by using the comment section. Okay, we started receiving questions from Zoom chat. Let me start with the first question from Iga. Can you hint on the type of meetings and tools in which we can reinforce the strategy? For example, do you have a regular meeting where you check if the activities are bringing the initiatives forward? Do you track the key results in specific tools? How do you report progress on the key results to the management?
Great. Yeah, some very good questions, and I think that touches a lot on the governance and reporting part of the canvas that I shared in the beginning of the presentation, which is very important and can sometimes be a challenging aspect. So how I typically approach this is you need to have governance that covers different levels in the organization. So you need to have a structure set up around how you roll out the OKRs. So how often do you roll them out? How do you evaluate them? So how often do you meet to evaluate on the OKR level if we're achieving the results? And then when do you set out new OKRs, and how do you score the previous OKRs that you have been working on? So that's kind of one level you need to make sure you have a structure around. And then when you move down through the organization, then of course it's important that your roadmaps are linking up into your OKRs, and you have a framework set up around how do you manage and govern your roadmap towards the organization. So is it monthly meetings, for example, that you're setting up where the product teams are presenting the roadmaps and how the roadmap is tying in to the OKR framework and what the expected outcomes are of the different features that you're working on? And then depending on what type of features you're working on and also the maturity of your company, then you of course also need to have a clear view on how you measure the impact of delivering these features, right? So basically instrumentation of features. I'm coming now working in a startup, and startups are characterized by not having a lot of customers. So a lot of the feedback and instrumentation we get is qualitative feedback, because we need to reach out to the customers and interview them and research together with them and co-create together with them. Whereas in my previous company where we had approximately 10,000 active users per day, we were collecting a lot of quantitative data on usage of features just after we deployed new features. So this really depends on where your product is in your life cycle and also your company in the life cycle, how you instrument the different features. And with regards to, and then of course, besides having the roadmap meetings, then you also have your team level meetings where the teams are reviewing the work that has to be done and recalibrating and reprioritizing the work. So I would recommend that you address this at probably 3 levels. So the executive level, the more kind of company-wide level, and then also the team level, and set up your meetings around that. And then with regards to the tools, there are a lot of different tools out there. Most companies, they have a project management tool, which is very good at managing backlogs, but I would also highly recommend you at looking at the product management tools that are designed around how to structure your product strategy and also deploying it. Some of the tools are very good in defining the strategy, and some of them also cover OKRs and deploying them. So you can define them there, you can communicate them through these tools, and yet spread them around in the company. Yeah, and we are using Product Board if you're interested in knowing which one we are using.
Thank you for detailed answer. Johannes, I hope I am pronouncing your name correctly. Would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much, Nicholas, for the presentation. I was wondering, so in the impact mapping sessions, do you also include external stakeholders that are not part of your organization as well? And how does that normally work? So how much insights do you share with them? How does that work for you?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I mean, I think it depends a lot on who it is that are externals, and also how accustomed they are to this way of working, right? Because to some it could be quite overwhelming, that you get into. Even just accessing a digital whiteboard could be overwhelming for some externals. I would say it really depends on who you are inviting in, and also at what time you're inviting them in. Because we have tried to build out impact maps, firstly internally in the company, and then inviting in a technology partner into the impact map to show them where they are fitting in and what responsibilities that they are contributing with, but also giving them an understanding of what we are doing on the other side of the table and how things are coming together in order to achieve a target. So yeah, I would say you could definitely do that.
Cool. Thanks so much. Another follow-up question would be where, so when it comes to, let's say, business strategy. So for example, just to give the example, so I come from a business background, but I'm a product manager, and so sometimes I feel there is maybe also a lack of business strategy. So, and where do you see the involvement of a product manager in that regard? And how far do you dig into that? Because we obviously have overlaps. So how far would you go?
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, sometimes we as product managers need to navigate in companies where there is a white space that has to be filled. I would still say that it's very important that you find a strong ally from the commercial part of the organization, and really ask a lot of questions around what is the goals, what is the strategy for the company, and also making sure that you use the same way of segmenting the customers, segmenting the markets, looking at the different growth channels that the company is focusing on, and then using that actively in crafting your product strategy. And if you see that it's difficult for you to find that connection, then asking questions is maybe also a good way of gently reminding your colleagues that maybe they have some work that they need to do themselves.
We got it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, and thanks for the questions.
Mehmet, would you like to unmute yourself to ask your question?
Hello, thank you for the great presentation. I just would like to ask, what is the approach that you had narrowing down the strategic objectives into measurable and verifiable key results? I mean, how do you clearly set the key metrics in the key results?
So the OKR level, I would say, typically comes from the executive team, from the management team. So they are, reporting to the board of directors. They are responsible for making sure that the company grows, that you move the company forward in a direction that is aligned with what is expected. So in most cases, the executive team have a very good and clear view on what it is they need to achieve. A new market we need to enter, need to increase market share, grow revenue. There can be many different strategic targets that have to be set. Sometimes they have not been articulated as OKRs, but maybe they are hidden a little bit away in a company presentation or something else, and you need to dig out the data and dig out the information from some of these resources that have already been developed by the executive team. And then you can use this information to craft an OKR, and then you can validate with the executive team or the management team or whoever you're speaking to, whether they see that this is a right representation of what they had already outlined for the company. And then you basically have your OKR, and then it's about engaging the stakeholders that needs to be involved in order to deliver against that OKR. So that could be your product teams, it could be your operations team and marketing team in this example. And then you rally all of the necessary people from those departments into a meeting, and and then work down from there.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And I can see another question from Valentina. Valentina, would you like to provide further explanations for your question? If not, I also have a question. I can ask it. Okay. If the product team doesn't believe in the shared product strategy, what should the CPO or product lead do? Do you have any suggestion?
Yeah. Then if the product team doesn't believe in the strategy, I mean, there can basically be two reasons for it. Either the product leader has not been successful in explaining why we are doing things the way we are doing and how those activities are helping the company to achieve the goals that have been set out. That's one thing. Then it's a communication problem, right? You need to make sure that your teams understands to the same level as you understand, so the teams, they get empowered to make decisions by themselves. And sometimes, and this also goes for myself, I'm sure that when we are super busy and you yourself have a very clear view on how something needs to be done, then you think by saying it once, then everybody else understands it to the same level of detail as you do. But that's really not how it is, right? So you need to sometimes feel like you have over communicated the same topic and again and again and again before everybody really starts to understand. And sometimes you also need to be very visual about it, building wireframes, doing whiteboard sessions, and a lot of various visual elements that can help everybody understand what it is that the strategy is. So it could either be that, or it could also be that the product leader is actually not right about the views, but then the product team, they should be very clear in identifying and arguing why they believe that the strategy is wrong. I started, or at some point in time in the presentation, I said it's very important that we feedback all of the learnings that we get from product discovery, from customer research, and all of the different experimentation that the product teams are doing. A lot of learning and a lot of knowledge comes from that. And all of that knowledge have to be fed back into the organization. So the product team also have a responsibility in sharing that knowledge with the product leaders and also with other leaders in the company to make sure that they are able to use all of this information to refine and craft the strategies.
Thank you so much for detailed answer. From Valentina, we received, how would you include customer perspective into these frameworks, OKRs, impact mapping framework?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the impact map that I presented, you could actually have had, instead of features, you could have had problems that you need to discover and research. So you have kind of the early phases of your product development lifecycle. You would typically not be addressing specific features, but you would be addressing specific problems that you need to understand more. So the initiatives that you would have defined in the lowest level of the impact map would then have been discovery work or experiments that you need to run, or other activities, initiatives that you need to do. So that's how I would link that in, that feedback and involvement of customers into the framework.
Today we are receiving a lot of questions. We also received, how do you convince the marketing team to follow up on those suggestions from Socrates?
I mean, in the best world, the marketing team have been part of building the impact map. So it's not you who are coming up with these ideas, that the marketing team, they need to do it. It should be representatives from the marketing team that are engaged in this session here, and they come up with ideas on how they can contribute to hitting the strategic goals. And like with many other things, when people come up with the idea themselves, they typically own the idea much more than if somebody else has told them they need to do it. So I think that's another powerful aspect of this framework, is that you really get a lot of buy-in from the beginning from the different stakeholders that participate.
Thank you so much. We received another interesting question from Juliana. Do you have any suggestions for how to create a product strategy when the company's strategy is fluff, broad, or unspecific?
I mean, for crafting the product strategy, I set out this strategy canvas. So I would look to that, and as I mentioned, I wrote an article about it. So check it out. It goes into more details. But back to the question from Johannes, if the company strategy is fluffy, then you need to start asking questions. You need to start asking, what value and what direction does my company, does my product need to take us? And by asking some high-level questions around commercial targets and strategic targets, then I'm pretty sure you would be able to extract at least some form of understanding from what is expected from your from the company. If you start asking questions to the commercial team, like, which customers are you going after? Which markets? What is the expected growth within the different segments? Do we see a lot of churn on some particular customer segments, and so on? Then you start digging out a lot of this information that can be very useful. And then my recommendation would be that once you have retrieved some of this information, then you should probably play it back to these stakeholders again and say, was this a right understanding? Did I understand you in the right way? And if they then kind of agree, then you have a sign off saying, okay, then I will focus on these problems that we have identified and target those.
We are receiving a lot of kudos messages from LinkedIn.
Okay.
And to finish on time, we can cover one last question. How do you deal with cross-team dependencies when each team is defining their features to impact the goal? How do you measure the impact of each team? And do you use this framework only for product teams or also for other functions?
So let me start with the last part there. I think it can work for all functions. You could use it to plan a birthday party. I mean, it's really a agnostic framework, right? It's built on logic that you see from many other frameworks. So I think it can be useful for any team in your organization. Then to the first question around team dependencies, this is really a big topic, and it actually ties into many other things. For example, how are your team composition designed? Basically, how do you structure your product teams? And are the product teams designed in a way that limits dependencies between the teams. There will always be dependencies, so you can't eliminate it, but that's one very important thing to review. Anti-pattern of team composition is that you can't really deliver value to your customers without being dependent on other teams. And if you believe you actually have the right team composition and you have designed the product teams in the correct way, but you still see these conflicting priorities, then I think it's very good to ask the team, so the stuff that you're working on, which strategic goals is that focusing on? And then asking the same to the other teams, and then you can start prioritizing the strategic goals and the value that these strategic goals are focusing on, and then you need to use that context to agree on the priorities.
Thank you, Nicholas, for amazing presentation, answering questions, and thank you everyone for joining. See you next Tuesday.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you.